I'll be the welcome. Sure. I'll be the
Okay,
welcome.
come on in. Hey, if you wouldn't mind signing in, she's got the sign-in sheet and we've got everything.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll be the,
You go ahead.
it ain't, okay. Yeah, we're gonna start on time today, we're gonna try to anyway, so. We wanna thank everybody for coming out for our Wings Wellness Half Hour of Power. And today we're very excited to have Dianne Parks and Susan Phillips, who are both master gardeners for several years now. And of course they grow vegetables in containers and in garden plots at their own home. I thought it was really interesting that they both volunteer as project coordinators at the Plant-A-Row Project for the Hungry at Davies Manor. And Dianne tells me last year they harvested over 2,000 pounds of produce from this garden, and it benefited the YWCA Women's Shelter and the Food Bank here in Memphis. So Master Gardeners do a lot of good work in the community. Today, what we're going to do, Dianne and Susan are going to talk for about 20 minutes or so, and then they'll take questions at the end. I know they like to be a little bit more interactive than that, but we're trying to be done. We want to be out of here in 30 minutes. Anyone can stay if they have time for a little while afterwards, but we're going to try and hold questions until after they get done with their presentation. So we want to welcome Dianne Parks and Susan Phillips.
Thank you. On your handouts, you will have a lot more. We're going to talk a little bit about planting lettuce and collards and anything else that you can plant in the winter or fall time. The handouts have more information than we're going to give you. We're going to be quick about what we say. But if you were going to say you're going to plant lettuce in your garden or in your container, we're doing containers. This is just a pot that probably came from Kroger, and it was a hanging basket at one time. I like it because it's got this little shield in here, and you can put it down in the bottom, and that way you have plenty of drainage. If you just have one person in your family, if you've got two, you can have two of these. If you've got four, you could make a big container of lettuces, put half of it lettuces and put half of it spinach or something like that. That would be a good container to grow some greens in if you wanted to do that. You'd need about a good 10 inches of soil in that big container. You could fill the rest of it up with bottles. We've got empty Coke bottles in here, and we've got empty plastic bottles that are down in here. And if you've got them all spread out, then you can fill it up about halfway with the Coke bottles, and that way you don't have to put as much soil in there. And that way it's not as heavy if you want to haul it around.
You could put straw in there too.
Yeah, straw is good. And so we've got our soil. Our soil is going to be an organic mix, especially if you have something small like this. And you put your soil in there, pat it down just a little bit. You get your lettuce, decide what kind of lettuce you want. I always like something fluffy and pretty, dark. I like color. The more color and the more dark it is, then the more nutritious it's going to be. This year I used some Red Fire lettuce from Pine Tree Garden Seeds. You've got Royal Red. You've got some spinach there, and just any kind of lettuce that you see at Walmart, any kind of store like that, Lowe's, any big box store, any nursery will have it.
I was, excuse me, I was at Lowe's the other day, and this is the first year that I've seen stores actually supply seeds for fall and winter. Usually it's just, you know, they have their spring and summer seeds, and when they're done, they're gone, and you don't see seeds until the next spring. But I think there are so many people that are interested in gardening now that they've done this. So they have a whole rack with all kinds of spinach and kale and greens and lettuce and everything that you can plant now. So that's a place to go if you don't know where to go.
Yep. The organic soil can be bought in a bag over at like Dan West, or you could call any nursery that's close to you. Dan West just happens to be close to where we live. And how did you say that?
Fafford.
Fafford is a good brand to get. I don't really like Miracle Grow. It just doesn't seem to have enough nutrients in it. But you put your Fafford in here, pat it down a little bit, sprinkle your seeds around, and then put a little bit more soil over on top of it to get them covered decently, you know, not a half inch or anything, just about 1/8 of an inch. And then get a fine mist, or you can use one of these watering cans and sprinkle the water over it. And tomorrow, say you come back tomorrow and you think, well, does it need water? So you stick your finger down in there. Yeah, it needs a little water. It doesn't feel moist at all, so water it again. If you stick it in there the next day, you can, there's no water. I mean, you feel like it's moist, then go ahead and don't water it. Just common sense. And make sure that where you put your pot, that you will have 6 to 8 hours of sun. You can have a little bit less with lettuces because they're cool weather. You can have a little bit less with collard greens and stuff. I planted collard greens all along my outside, right next to my house, and there's a tree above it, so it will get sun in the morning, and the other side will get sun in the afternoon. So, you know, it had plenty, and I had plenty of greens to eat. I love
And that
it.
keeps collards, they keep coming back and coming back. And you don't really have to, unless we get like 0 degrees, you don't have to worry about covering them. Mine went all last winter without being covered once. And they'll kind of die back, but then when it warms up a little, they shoot out again. So collards are good.
It's kind of like a free planting.
Yeah.
Like you've already planted it, and you really pop back in the spring, and you think, wow.
In fact, I just cut mine off at the ground, and now I have them shooting out again from last spring, and I'm thinking, I wonder if this is going to do, you know, or do I need to just dig these up and start over, or I might just let them go and see what happens and maybe get 2 years for one or something.
You never know. After your lettuce starts coming up, you want to make sure you thin it a little bit. It's according to how many seeds you put in there. In this little pot, maybe I'd have them about 1.5 inches apart. In a pot like that, maybe a couple of 3 inches apart would be how I'd put my seeds. Get a little manicure scissors and go and snip them right at the ground or soil level. And that way you'll have, the plants will come up and grow stronger. If you pull them out by the leaf itself, you might mess up some of the roots that are down in
You're
the soil.
talking about thinning?
Yeah, thinning,
Okay.
yeah.
Just cut it off at the top of the ground.
Yes. Okay, we've watered them, we've planted them, watered them, and we've got everything going. And next thing you want to do, every 2 to 4 weeks, since you have a pot here, you definitely want to fertilize. And for fertilizer, I've been using this. Dianne put me on this. It's fish fertilizer. It's found inside the, I found it at Dan West. I got a bottle just like that. But use it about half strength. And then sprinkle it over there like you're going to water it about every 2 to 4 weeks. And you'll have the lettuces coming up. And sometimes you can cut the outside leaves of the lettuce, and sometimes you might want to cut the whole thing. It's just according to how big they're getting. In the beginning, the outside leaves grow a lot faster. And also, the reason you want to do it every 2 to 4 weeks is because the more you water it, and you water a lot with pots, the fertilizer would leach out of the soil. So.
One thing, the fish fertilizer is high in nitrogen, and most of your fall and winter crops are leafy, they use a lot of nitrogen, you know, they're not making blooms and fruit, they're just doing their leafy stuff, so that's why that fish fertilizer is especially good for winter crops.
Okay, and that's about all I have on the lettuces and collard greens and such.
One thing I want to say is cilantro. You know, a lot of people like cilantro. I love it. And that's a good cool weather crop that you can plant in your pots. In fact, I just planted 2 pots full of it. I saved my seeds from last year when they went to seed. And so yesterday I just went out and sprinkled my seeds in the pots and, you know, did like Susan said with the lettuce. And in a couple of weeks, you know, they should start growing. And then when about the time that it cools off, they'll just really take off. And you can have cilantro all winter. Now, it will die back, you know, when you get some real cold weather. But then when it warms up a little bit, it'll come back. And it will go until probably May, the latter part of April. And then it will start flowering and going to seed. And it always amuses me that they sell cilantro for planting in the spring. So people say, oh, I've never been able to grow cilantro, you know, I get it and plant it and it dies. It gets hot and it dies. Well, it's just at the wrong time of the year. And so...
Can you do parsley like that too? Yeah, parsley and
Parsley, I think you can, I think it reseeds. Somebody gave me some parsley seeds for the Davies garden a couple weeks ago, and she said hers were all going to seed and that it comes up every year. And so if hers is going to seed and, you know, falling on the ground, I'm just going to take those seeds and sprinkle them around, and I don't know if they'll come up this fall, but they'll probably come up in the spring. For anybody who's really into herbs, we're trying a new herb at the Davies garden. I don't know if anybody likes or has ever tried to grow celery. I don't think it grows too well around here, but we're trying lovage, L-O-V-A-G-E, which you can sow now, and it will come up in the spring. I don't know if we'll get any shoots this fall or not, but it has a real strong celery flavor. It's mostly leaves. It has kind of a hollow stem. They say you can cut the stem off and use it as a straw, you know, like if you're drinking tomato juice or something. It sounds like a really interesting herb, and I just really can't wait to get into it. So it would be a way for us in the South to have something, a celery flavoring for our soups and stews and whatever, without all the, you know, trying to grow celery, which I don't think we can. I'm like Susan with the lettuces. I just really love to grow lettuce. There's so many that are so pretty. In fact, they're, you know, they're decorative. They're like ornamentals. My favorite is the Lola Rosa, which is, it's real curly, and it's different shades of green and red, and it's just beautiful, and it looks good mixed in with other salad greens. The spinach, sometimes spinach can be a little bit tricky, but we planted some last year out at Davies, probably, I don't know, maybe it was October, late September, and we waited and waited and waited. Nothing ever happened. So we decided to go ahead and try again, and this was like the first week in December. And of course, you know, last year was warmer, a warmer winter than normal. But we went ahead and did it, and this time we soaked the seeds overnight. And within a week or 10 days, those seeds were up and sprouting. So if you're going to try and grow spinach, a good idea would be to soak your seeds overnight. The one thing that we did last year is we covered our beds, and we grew lettuce all winter long from September into May. We were harvesting lettuce in the middle of the winter. We had to go out there every night that it was predicted to be 32 degrees or lower and cover it up. Of course, we had a big bed, and so we had the hoops, you know, the low tunnel, and we used covering. This is called Agribon, and I don't know if I mentioned the brand name in the notes or not, but probably if you're not doing a big bed, you're just doing small containers. Unless you had a lot of containers, you might not want to invest in this because the minimum roll is 50 feet. So you could do just as well. You could get some wire. I don't know if this is but make yourself a little dome like that, and take a sheet, or you know, if it's only going to get 30, 32, 31, just put a sheet over it. And you could actually, what I do, I have a piece of elastic that, and this would be more secure when you have soil in there. Put your sheet over it and then secure it around the edge with the elastic, and that works really good. Then if it's going to get, you know, say go down to 24, 25, get a little cooler, you could cover it over with an additional sheet of plastic, just to make sure. Some of the vegetables, like spinach, I don't think we covered our spinach at all, and they just weathered the cold weather just fine. We didn't have any loss of spinach. The lettuce, however, is quite a bit more tender, so if it says 32 degrees, you better get your little lettuce covered up. As far as when to plant, we are supposed to be in zone 7B. I think there are little pockets that of the Memphis area that might be considered zone 8. You'll see, like if you go online, you will see lots of different frost dates. As far as, like, you want to get your seeds planted up and growing pretty well before the first predicted frost date. Ours is October 15th. I've seen places where it has been later, like the 1st of November. But usually you'll see charts, they'll say like the first predicted frost date of like 20% on the 15th, then 50% on the 1st of November, and 100% on the 15th of November. It just kind of gives you the odds of what it's going to be because nobody knows. But anyway, if you look on your seed packet, they'll tell you how many days to maturity. So that kind of gives you an idea of, you know, counting back from your frost date of when you want to plant this to get these little things up and growing. They don't have to come to maturity by the frost date if you're going to cover. If you're not going to cover, you want to have them harvested before the predicted frost date. So you'll just have to look and see. There's a lot of charts that says, okay, plant your carrots, you know, between this date and this date, and you can go by that, but you can predict it yourself just by looking at the days to maturity and your frost date. Like we said, the collards are really tough. Another one that's tough is kale. We've got a new kind of, well, this is one of the seeds that I got at Lowe's in their new fall seeds. This is called True Siberian Kale, and it's supposed to be more cold tolerant than most kale. But kale is another, you know, kale is so nutritious, and you can use it in soups and salads, and if you've seen $5 bags of kale chips, you know, you might want to try and make your own kale chips, which I did last year, and they were okay, but I think I'm going to try and, I've seen some new recipes since then that I'm going to try and improve on them. But anyway, I can't wait to try this. And there's red kale, Italian kale, a lot of different real pretty kales. The carrots is something else that you could plant, and something that's especially good for containers are these stubby little carrots. You don't need a real deep container. I just thought these were just really cute. Then if you want longer carrots, we have the dragon carrots. They're red. I like unusual things. Beets. Beets you could plant in containers. Here's another, what is that? Oh, mustard. Mustard green, curly mustard green. Mustard and turnip greens. These are pretty beets. And I think we're about to the time that if anybody has any questions.
I have a couple. So, first of all, is it the cold or the frost? In other words, I have a porch. Could I bring the lettuce in under the porch and would that shelter them, or do I actually have to have them out in the cold?
I've brought things in under, you know, I have like a patio with an overhang.
Right.
I've brought it in already. If it's, you know, say there's a chance it's going to be 32, I'll pull them in and not cover them. I think just the freezing, you know, if it's going to just get really cold, especially wind. Wind does a number on them. They sometimes can withstand the cold better than they can the wind. But I wouldn't chance it too much as far as, just bringing them in like that. Lettuce. I'm talking mainly about lettuce.
Is it too early to plant fall containers, or can we start now? As a rule of thumb?
You can start now.
Okay.
In fact, I've started.
It's not too hot for them?
I think it kind of starts out pretty warm, but that helps the seeds germinate and get going.
Gotcha.
If it seems, well, I'm doing my little bedding plant type, little seedling trays. So if it gets really too hot, I can take mine inside.
Gotcha.
What do you think about it? You think it's okay to plant?
I think so, because it takes 7 to 10 days for them to germinate in the first place. So it's going to be a week later before you even see anything popping up. So it'll be a little bit cooler then, hopefully. We don't know. It could turn into 100 degrees in September here.
Yeah.
you just don't know.
That's
Put them over in the shade,
the thing about growing things. The farmers have a lot to put up with. They never know what's going to happen with the weather.
Yeah, and this seed, you know, it's not that expensive if you go over to Walmart or someplace like that. Do it over again. It's just lettuce, you know.
Right, right.
It's not brain surgery or anything. Just throw it in there and pat it down and go for it again.
Okay.
Can you do head lettuce in a container?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Pretty.
Here, well, this is, I would call it a semi-head, romaine.
Uh-huh.
This is baby romaine, and I've planted this already, and it makes a nice little head. It's a nice lettuce, I like it. And it actually gets, you know, about that big. And of course the romaine, once you cut it off, that's pretty much it. You know, the head lettuce. You might start getting little growths coming out again that you could snip off, but you never get a nice big head like you had at first. And then there's some of them, like this one here is called Four Seasons. It has somewhat of a loose head. And this one, once you cut it off, it will come back. It doesn't give you the nice head that, you know, that you did have, but it looks pretty good. I like this one for making, you know, like you get the little, at P.F. Chang's, you get the little, I forget what you call it.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, it makes nice little pockets.
What about cruciferous vegetables, broccoli and cauliflower?
You would,
need a big one.
yeah,
pot.
you would need a big pot, because cauliflower and cabbage, you know, they get like this. And I had, last year, I had some red cabbage. I actually started it from seed, but you know, if you're just going to do a few, you might want to just go get some plants, you know, already started.
So they get that big? Is that
Yeah, they get really big. So you would just want one. Anyway, it was pretty. I had it in a pot a little bit smaller than that, and it was really pretty nice. Had a cabbage, and then another cabbage would be like the Savoy, you know, the crinkly. Just, you know, some decorative, instead of your ornamental kale and all that, get a pretty cabbage or pretty kale or something you can eat instead of
Right.
just look at.
They do have many cabbage heads, seeds for those, but I don't know if you could start them in something like this. Something like that, I would probably try to start it under my lights and then put it out there. Or you could go to, we haven't checked yet, but we're hoping that Lowe's and Bonnie Plants comes in with some seedlings for cabbage and broccoli and such as that. You could get the smaller heads and try that.
Yeah, it's really too late to be thinking of seeds, starting your cabbage from seeds.
A little more about the container. Other than plastic, what are some of the other materials? I grew our potatoes in an old tin tub. Is that okay, or is that too cold? Could that cold more? Styrofoam.
As far as
you know, is there anything else you can use?
Wintering, it's nice to have the double-walled containers. Something just flew out of my head. I think as far as a metal container might not be too good for winter vegetables, as well as like clay pots, which aren't good anyway because they soak up all the water and they dry out fast. They're also going to freeze, the clay pots. I think for winter containers, the double-walled plastic are best. Second best would just be the single-walled plastic, and you can even use plastic buckets.
Oh, yeah.
250 buckets that you could get it closed.
I've done that with tomatoes, but I knew it was summer, you know.
Yeah. You could, if you found a bucket that's a little bit bigger than this, you could put this inside that.
Kitty litter buckets are great.
Yeah.
So how many of the lettuce would you try to plant in that container there, just kind of as a rule of thumb?
I would just get my seed and sprinkle it around, and then if they came up, when they came up, just snip them and make sure they're about 1.5 inches apart.
Would you thin it back to 1 or 2 or 5 or?
It kind of depends on what kind of lettuce you're planting.
Yeah, too.
If you're planting just lettuce that just, you know, comes
Goes
up
up.
single leaves, you're going to want to put in more than if you have the type that are kind of clumpy head type.
Yeah, this red fire lettuce that I planted, it would come in a big clump and come up like that. Probably I'd have 5 of those. 1 in the center and 2 on each side.
Okay.
And that will give you lots of lettuce there.
Yeah.
And it just keeps coming back.
Well, oh, I'm sorry.
I just got
Go
a
ahead.
quick question. When you say you sniff, you use like a manicure
Yeah, you
scissors.
can use manicure scissors.
Do you sniff from like down at the root of it or the top? I'm just kind
I
of
would snip right at the soil level.
at the soil level.
Yeah, that's how we did our carrots too, is just snip at the soil level, because we didn't want to pull them up
Okay.
and destroy any other kind of roots that we may have.
And the last question is, do you guys have problems with bugs or?
Yeah, we do,
Okay.
especially in the summer. But the beauty about winter gardening is you don't have problems with bugs or disease.
Okay. Great.
It's really a big plus.
You know, you could just flick them off. If you send them. Pick up your little bucket.
I never saw, in the winter I've
No,
never
I
seen.
hadn't either.
Not unless
really.
we would have a spell of, you know, it'd go up to 60 degrees for a couple
Yeah.
days or something. Then they might come out a little bit, but they just don't take over your garden like they do in the summertime. A lot less work than summer gardening.
Well, I just want to say in the interest of time that this is the fastest 30 minutes that I've had all day. And obviously, Dianne and Susan are just a wealth of knowledge. And so if they're willing, and anyone who wants to stay, you can continue to ask questions. We're not going to kick you out of here. We just wanted to mark the 30 minutes. So,
Yeah, it went a lot quicker than a long-winded preacher.
yeah.